Welcome back to another episode of Suckcessfull, the podcast.
I'm one of your hosts, Blake, and joining me,
I'm one of your other hosts, Justin.
And this is the podcast all about the not-so-subtle truth about success and
the art of sucking less in pursuit of it. Let's not waste any more time and get right to the show.
So I got in an argument with someone the other day over a very common saying, which was interesting. And it's funny because I edited our money episode and wealth episode. And so it just got tied back in for this one, since we are today talking about weird things we've heard and debunking things. So
bad advice all the way around. Go ahead.
I'm sure everyone has heard this saying, and you're probably gonna be like, well, I don't know what the argument is, but you've got to have money to make money is one of those things that I just want to be like, when someone says it, just whack.
So when I was growing up, I think the term you're looking for, and please, this is not meant to be a hashtag, we called it a bitch slap.
Yes.
So I think that's the term you're looking for.
Yes, that would be the term. But I was so irritated because the person I was talking to, they were like, no, you have to have money to make money. And I'm like, then how do you explain all of the people who didn't have money, who now have a lot of money? I was so aggravated. And I was like, I feel like that's a common misconception. It's not you've got to have money to make money. It's you've got to have value to make money. And then we got in this whole discussion about it.
Where'd you end up?
It ended up with, I'm right because I'm always right. No, I'm just kidding. Kind of not kidding, but
yes.
But it ended on essentially we argued our points until the other person just didn't want to talk about it anymore.
Okay, so that's a fair, that is an exhausting argument, but it looks like you guys got your points across and neither of you were swayed.
No.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. I've got one that's similar to that, but it's different, but it's one of those things that people say all the time that drives me nuts. And I meet people like this probably close to daily. No joke. I'm a self-made person. That grates on me so much because just for all of you out there, some of you are going to be thinking, well, but I am self-made. No, you're not. I like to think I'm self-made, but I'm not. Because I had connections, I made friends, I did other things. I couldn't have done all this by myself, right? There's nothing that I did all by myself. You can go to Mark Cuban, you can go to Scottie Pippen, whoever you want to name out there, right? They either had a great coach, a great partner, a good connection, something that led them to the path that they went down. I get irritated by the thought that, yes, every man's an island kind of thing. And that's not true. We're all connected. Yes, you may be lucky. Yes, you may be self-driven. Yes, you may be an A-type personality. And yes, you may be motivated to go this direction, but there's help along the way, whether it's a bank, you got a loan. Well, but I got the loan myself. No, you didn't. The bank gave you the money. See where I'm going with this? So it's to me, I don't think anyone's an island. I don't think that there's such thing as a self-made person. I do think that you can be lucky in all those things, but I don't think it's one-sided. And then I think when you get in those mindsets of me, it changes from the value proposition you brought up a second ago to the idea of selfishness, where you fail in that moment of time.
I agree. And I think that comes from just a common misconception again. I feel like a lot of these are common misconceptions.
Absolutely.
Because if you think about it, I don't know anybody who's wealthy, even people who I wouldn't even call millionaires or whatever. I'm just talking about generally comfortable, that doesn't have some sort of an assistant or someone who does their lawn or someone who does their pool or whatever. So people who have some sort of wealth, even if it's not millionaires, usually delegate. So if you didn't have those delegating people, you would not have the time to be doing all this other stuff. So what do you call that? I don't understand that mindset.
I tip my hat to you. That's my point exactly. It's the idea that there's other things in your life. And I would just, the only piece I'd counter to what you were saying is, I don't even think you need to be wealthy. I know some people that aren't what I consider to be wealthy.
True. Yeah, that's
and they've
true.
got family members that help out and watch the kids, that kind of thing, and they're like, that's still an opportunity there. It's very interesting to me. So please, after you've listened to this, let's stop referring to the phrase self-made and more, this is what I did to get here.
I wonder where that came from, when that started.
I'm just going to say it right now because I can say it. There's certain things in life that people can say and you can't say. It was some douchebag white guy, probably in the 50s. I'm just going to say it now. Okay. I feel very comfortable and I feel like I've been like redeemed here by saying that, but I guarantee you there was no woman that said that. It was a man, most likely white and most likely from the United States. That's where I'm going to go with this.
You're probably right. That made me think of something actually that's not on my list, but I think kind of goes along with what you're saying, which is an interesting concept. So, a lot of entrepreneurs think that they have to create things or do things for their customers, and they will do like all these surveys and all this stuff. And oftentimes they're like spinning their wheels trying to figure out, well, what does the customer want? And I think asking the question, what does the customer want, is the wrong question to be asking. And to quote Henry Ford, who said, well, if everybody wanted me to give them what they wanted, they would have said, give me a faster horse, not a car. I
Great
think
quote.
if you are not focusing more on creating a value and solving a problem, and you're focused on what do people think they want, most people don't know what they want. Most people are not self-aware enough to tell you how they're even feeling in the morning. So if you're going to base your information and your decision making off of that, you're always going to be spinning your wheels.
All right, you were the first today. It just came in. The knowledge bomb has been dropped. We are all included in that. That was wonderful. And I agree with you. I think it's a very interesting point because there's a lot that goes into that, right? It's not just this little platitude thing. Because the other thing that I would add that I hear that's similar along that vein is that the whole quote, and I don't know where it's come from the last month, but everywhere I look, I've had two people yesterday at soccer practice bring it up to me. This is the quote of the month for me. And it's the Thomas Edison quote, I didn't fail 10,000 times. I found 10,000 ways to build a light bulb kind of thing. Although the message is really good, I think it's bastardized in a lot of ways. Kind of where you were going with what you were saying in terms of people not only not know what they want most of the time, right? And we're kind of envisioning and listening. Like that's what I love. Like one of my favorite things, especially in the entertainment industry, is before movies come out, there's usually a focus group of some kind. There's a pre-show, there's a focus group, there's all these different things going on in the background. And what you'll find is most of the time, if they make those changes, the movie will not do as well if it had gone another direction. When people are in a group together, they see things differently, they act differently, they don't want to stand out, which is usually what you need in those kind of scenarios. Same thing with this. The reason I don't like this quote that much is not because the message is bad, but because the idea is just keep going to keep going. Sometimes ideas are bad and maybe you should stop. I think a lot of the times people use this as an excuse to say, well, I'm just going to keep going until it works. That's not the way it works either. It needs to be something that is value add. It needs to be something that does do something that enables either more market share, more market growth. It enables life to change a little bit. It does something, it takes something off of someone's plate. If you're just creating it like the whole field of dreams, if you build it, they will come. That's not the way it works. That's why there's things called marketing, right? If you didn't need it, or if you needed it, you wouldn't need marketing, right? That's the whole idea. When I was growing up, there was no such thing as Monster or Bang or Celsius or Red Bull. Like none of that existed, right? That was not in my life as a kid. If I had had that, my heart would have probably blown up because I'm so wired. But all of a sudden you look around, that's everywhere. Someone found a need for an energy drink and then it just proliferated through society. And obviously I'm in the minority here because almost everyone on earth takes them and there's a multi-billion-dollar industry. But that's an example of an idea that I would have never thought of myself. And it's proliferated throughout all cultures everywhere on earth. That's a good example of an idea that probably took multiple iterations and everything else. And they were like, coffee's just not good enough for me. It's kind of like back in the 80s when we had cocaine and all of a sudden crack came around. Cocaine wasn't strong enough, right? We got to go the crack route. That's what I'm saying here.
Well, it seems like we are kind of in sync here where we're getting a lot of business and entrepreneur and money type things the last couple of weeks, because some of the stuff that you said makes me think of some other things that weren't on my list, which was I had a friend of mine say, well, people won't pay that here. And they had told me that they had been approached by a couple of people. And I was like, that's great. And they were like, yeah, I'm going to do this job for this amount. And I went, oh. And they were like, why are you reacting that way? Are you not happy for me? I said, no, I'm happy for you. It's just, you do realize you could have charged more for that, right? Well, what do you mean? People won't pay that here. Oh, yes, they will. Statistically, actually, if you want to get into facts, because people who argue these things like to try to throw facts at me. And then I'm like, you haven't done your research. I have. The facts are statistically that when you charge more money, you have a tendency to get more clients. People who provide services that are higher pay amounts tend to get more clients because you're taken more seriously. People know that if you're going to charge what you should be charging for your services, then you must clearly know what you're doing. Whereas if you undercharge, they assume that you are not as seasoned as you say you are, regardless of who you've worked with or what you've accomplished. And statistically, when you are more confrontational in the sense that you're willing to draw healthy boundaries and stand up for yourself, people have a tendency to take you more seriously because they know that you're not a doormat. And that's where that old saying of you teach people how to treat you does come into play. Because if you're teaching people, you can walk all over me, you can pay me less than I deserve, they're going to, because you're already setting that standard.
Absolutely. And it is interesting. Like usual, we're in sync because there was a really, I was talking with a couple people over actually like the last month, and basically they're going through a thing now where they had a hit to their business, the bottom line, and they want to do basically a fire sale. And I said, that's the absolute last thing you want to do to get sales in, because it's going to cheapen your brand. It's going to do multiple other things in terms of desperation never produces good results.
No,
It may
if
be
you're
a
having
great
to
short term.
negotiate.
Yeah, exactly. And so if your brand, again, if you're a dollar store, fine, but I don't work with dollar stores. Not that I'm judging. That's not who my clients are. If you want a premium product, you must charge premium prices. A great example is LVMH, which owns like Louis Vuitton and Hermes and all those. Zero sales ever. And it's not because they think that they are so much better than everyone else. Maybe some people in there do, but their brand value is such that they don't need to do that. And so if you are concerned with this and you hear someone say something like, well, no one here would pay that price. One, if that's the case in that market, then go to a new market, because sometimes you might be in the wrong market. That is true. The second piece of it is go to brands that don't ever have sales. Like one of the things that I love is I love Tesla's overall. I think Elon Musk does a lot of very interesting things, but I just love Tesla because up until I think it was this year, maybe it was late last year, there is no negotiating on their price. The car costs what it costs. Now they did lower it a little bit because the market became saturated, but there is no negotiating. When you buy a Tesla, you do it 100% online. And if it's $45,000, it's $45,000. There's no like, like I'm going to negotiate or get these better wheels or whatever. Car companies are built on this model that's very weird to me, where the price you pay usually has no reflection of what the actual value is on that piece. It is a truly perceptive thing. And at the end of the day, we don't actually know what it costs to produce the car. We don't know how much money the end is really making, all those kind of things. When you are in that position, you're actually hurting your brand and your power to grow, because if no one knows what you're worth, like if you see a car advertisement and one day it's $14,999,999, and the next it's $12,999,999. Wouldn't you be pissed if you bought the $14,999,999, right? Like it sucks. Look for things, value yourself to the level where you view yourself not only as a brand, which we've talked about many times, but also the value of you in the marketplace. What is your value? And don't ever compromise on that.
Well, this is going to get a little controversial because coming from being a marketing specialist and all those things, one thing that I struggle with clients, with friends, in terms of their mindset is that they think because, oh, well, they won't pay that here, that's just the market. They think that that is the market. Most people, you're not a marketing specialist. You don't know what the market is. I'm not saying that to be nasty. That's how it is. And most of the time, the problem is not that they won't pay, it's that they don't understand the perceived value. So for example, if you're sitting here and your argument is, oh, well, it takes me 3 hours to do this work. Well, does it take you 3 hours to do this work because you did it for 10 years and you can do it that fast and nobody else can? The other thing is, are you telling your clients what your value is in terms of, well, I'm providing intellectual property, or I'm doing this or that or the other, whatever your actual value is, not the amount of time that it takes you to do the work. If you come at somebody with, this is how much time it takes me to do the work, that person's going to be like, well, I don't fucking care. Especially if there's somebody who's successful, because they already know and recognize that that's irrelevant. If you're basing your pricing solely off of how much time it does or does not take you to do the work, you are valuing your stuff wrong. You are valuing your pricing wrong. And if you're in a market where you're saying, oh, well, they won't pay that, it's probably because they don't understand the value, and you need to explain the value to them. That is your job then to explain. Now, there's a difference between explaining and negotiating. You shouldn't be negotiating your worth. If you have to negotiate your worth, then they don't recognize it at all. And there's no point because that person has no intention on understanding. But if they truly don't know, say like you're a film specialist, most people don't know how that stuff works. They don't understand that the equipment is extremely expensive. They don't understand you're hiring a specialist, those types of things. You have skills that other people don't have. You have to be the person who very clearly is able to communicate your value in a way that you're not negotiating your value to your clients. And that's where the big problem is with a lot of people that I see, especially artists. They can't perceive their own value because they don't know how to measure it. You measure it based off of the value. You have to figure out where your value is. And just because it may take you, as my friend likes to say, I could fart that out in my sleep amount of time to do it. You can do that because you spent 30 years figuring out how to fart it out in your sleep, not because anybody else on the street can fart it out in their sleep. Figure out your value.
First of all, the analogy is great, but that's probably the most farting we've ever done on the show. That is fantastic. Blake, you nailed it. High five to you and your friend. Let it out, people. Let it out. Never hold it in. On the side note here, so I agree with everything you're saying. And I think that one of the things that, like, for me, that I've always loved is like law. Okay. So like there's very few things out there now, hourly workers, all that kind of stuff. I've had a big issue with for a long time. And not because they're hourly workers, but because I've never understood when we ascribe a value to an hour like that, you're actually dehumanizing them in some way. Because prior to the 1800s, late 1700s, there was no hourly rate. That didn't exist in time ever. That was literally a factory metric all about efficiency. It's very interesting because people we love to metricize people, which I think are really funny to me. Like, how productive are we? It's so subjective on so many levels. But the interesting part is, so I had a lawyer client when I was starting out back in probably 2017, 2018, something like that. They really wanted to find a new way in the marketplace. I said, stop charging hourly. This is what you do. And they're like, but no one does that. And I said, yes, they do. All corporations, when they have lawyers on staff, they're not billing the company hourly. They are a salaried employee. So why are you any different? He goes, well, the marketplace. I'm like, oh my God, if I hear, well, the marketplace again, change the paradigm. One of the things I get annoyed with in medicine, right? You go see your doctor. You have no idea how much it's going to cost when you come out of there. Zero idea. The doctor doesn't know. Insurance doesn't know. It takes months to figure it out. And all of a sudden you get a bill. Wouldn't it be nice to go somewhere and be like, okay, this procedure, plastic surgery is a great example. It's exactly what it costs because there's no insurance and stuff like that involved. Same thing with this law firm. He started setting his pricing, basically saying, okay, he treated it like wills and everything else. So he said, look, if this is a litigation case, this is what I'm going to charge. If this is this, his business, it started out crazy slow at first because no one knew quite what to make of it. He is one of the largest lawyers in Southern California now because he did it in his entire practice. He's trying to go franchising now, which I think is interesting because the model, again, he just thought differently. And he was not a believer, by the way, FYI. I love to think that we were both foresightfulness. I was desperate for an idea, and this is what I came up with, and it seemed to work. And he was very against it at first, and then eventually adopted it, and now he loves it. And, he sends me emails every now and then saying, do you remember when we didn't like this? I'm like, yeah, I do. And I think that, again, it's one of those ideas that we started this whole conversation today of question everything, first of all. Secondly, just because someone says it doesn't mean it's right. One of the things that I'm learning, I'm reading Walter Isaacson's book on Elon Musk. And regardless of your opinion of him, right? I don't want to get into that. But one of the things he does with his companies is he challenges everything, which I think is really fun. Like there was when he started building SpaceX, there was this regulation for a valve. No one knew where this regulation came from, but it was going to cost like $20,000 for a little valve. So he literally went to a water cooler and took off that valve and put it on here and said, use this instead. No one, like everyone, like FAA wouldn't let it fly. He went all the way up the chain of command at the FAA and no one could find who issued this. They did a safety test with it and changed the entire paradigm of everything. He's like, look, challenge everything. And I think that's a great example of just because it's a rule, just because it's something as thorough as you think of like the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, question it. Just because it's there doesn't mean it's one, still relevant, and two, its purpose is still being used as was originally intended.
I agree with that. And what's interesting is I think part of the problem is it really comes down to the fact that America in general has this very overworked mentality when it comes to work in general.
Yes.
I think the problem with that is there's no work-life balance at a lot of companies. So we get used to this sort of rat race kind of mentality, rat race feeling. I heard a story recently about this girl who was working at a company. She was approached by her boss for like a check-in meeting. Her boss was like, "So how are you feeling?" And she immediately was worried that they were having a check-in meeting. So she was like, "Well, I don't feel like you're giving me enough work to do. I'm doing this in like an hour, 2 hours, and then I'm just like sitting at my desk." The lady kind of looked at her funny and she, nods, she listens, whatever. And then at the end of the girl's spiel, she goes, "Well, is it that you don't have enough work to do, or is it that you're used to having a boss in a company that overworks you all the time?" And the girl was like, "Wait, what?" And she goes, "I don't care how long it takes you to do it. I don't even care if you're doing other work while I'm paying you your salary. Your salary is to pay you to get the things done that we've talked about. As long as they're getting done, don't care." And that was the first time she had ever even thought about that. And I thought that was interesting because I know a lot of people who are like that. They never even consider it. They always are too worried about losing their job or whatever to consider it.
That's it's true. I mean, I met with a guy, so I'm coaching Jackson's soccer team again this year, and one of the dads is a typical Texas dad living vicariously through his kids and very serious about sports. So he wanted to have coffee on Sunday and kind of talk about the plan for the year. I rolled my eyes, but I'm like, "Look, I will give you an hour of my time. Don't waste it." Right. And it was very interesting to me because part of his thing was he didn't like when practice was on Wednesdays because he didn't like that he wasn't going to be there. And I said, "Well, one, it's for your child, not you. Secondly, there's 14 people on this team, and this is the best time for everybody. So, like, this is a collective thing. Three, I'm a volunteer. And four, so what's the issue?" And it was very interesting because he works for an oil and gas company. Although he works remote, he has to have his computer on between the core hours. And I was like, what? Like, that's so, like, we're monitoring people now whether we're productive. Like we talked a second ago, like we don't care about productivity. We want to know that we own you. That's called slavery. That is not work. That's an indentured servant. Like, do you not understand the difference here? Like, if you work for a company that is micromanaging you that severely, you need to bring up your values and figure out what it is in your life that you feel this is okay.
My friend from college, same thing. She works from home, but I went over there one day because we had a meeting and she has this thing that like moves her mouse. Apparently they will record everything on her computer to the point, not like where they actually care what the mouse is doing. Okay. They care that the mouse is moving. So they record that she's like sitting there moving the mouse every like certain amount of time. So she has this thing that like moves the mouse so that she can get up and go get coffee and stuff like that and have like a 10-minute meeting. And I'm like, the fuck? Like, I'm sorry. That's some like Big Brother. We're getting into like Fahrenheit 451 and those types of books. Like, I'm just like, no. And then she at the end of it, she goes, "Oh yeah, I love my job. We have job openings." I was like, thanks, but I'm good. I was like, okay, you've been brainwashed.
But it's so sad because I think we talked about this in one of our episodes that to me, like, although the pandemic sucked and it was a really tough time for, I don't know anyone that made it out like unscathed in some regard, right? I don't think we learned our lesson from it. We're going back to all these things that during the pandemic actually relieved that from us. And now we're like going back to this world. I don't know about Europe, the rest of it, but for the United States, we're going back to this world where basically we're indentured servants again. Productivity is the only metric that matters, and everything else is secondary. And it's very interesting to me because I just think that it can't last, one. And two, I think that it's a very sad place. You had all this growth, all these experiences of, going through a global pandemic. Everything's disrupted. You probably lost someone or you got really sick yourself. All these things that happen, and yet we were quick to forget that because the almighty dollar, that at the end of the day, that's what it matters. And I'm sure someone's going to go, "Oh God, that's some socialist like diatribe there." And I'm not a socialist at all. I love making money, but I want to do it smart. I want to do it for the right reasons. I want to do it for impact. And I want to do it to actually better people. Like work at the end of the day, if you're just showing up for a paycheck, that's not really benefiting anybody, right? It's probably going to cost you your health and it's going to not necessarily facilitate what it was meant to do in the end. I really, really want everyone to question things, just period today. That is my lesson today. I have like 50 more examples, but at the end of the day, what I'm really trying to say here is I want you guys to question things. I want you to look at things and wonder, why are we accepting it of that way? One of the things I always talk about is like the gas tank. I think it's so weird because the gas tank is literally different on so many different cars. You go back in time, it used to be in the front of cars. It's in the back of cars. Like the Pinto, you moved the license plate in and you stuck it, what I called it, the butt, which you stuck it in the butt, right? Yes, you can all laugh at this. Or, it's on the side or whatever. And it's funny because electric cars are doing the same thing. Instead of thinking differently, where can I stick the charger that's easy? They stick it almost always, including Teslas a lot of the time, in the same location that you would find a gas outlet on a normal petrol running automobile. On electric, you can put it literally anywhere. And it's just funny to me that we're so conditioned to think a certain way that we think about those little details that seem to not matter, but it kind of does. Why not be more creative? Why not put it somewhere more practical, whatever? I mean, I remember my dad got one. He had to get this like 40-foot, and this is in his garage. He had a Tesla. He had to get like a 40-foot cord because it had to go around the car because it was too hard to back in. He's older, so he didn't want to back in. And so he had to get this thing to go all the way around and plug it in on the other side. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. So anyways, my point here is just all these things, even when you think it's mundane, question it because there's probably a better answer. And if you're wondering where value comes in, that's the value proposition right there. When you start asking deeper questions, you get better answers, and that's value. The part of what's going to make you successful in life is not thinking like everyone else, right? When you talk about Blake's friend over here, you want to come work here? No. That's thinking differently. But she's bought in and done the Kool-Aid and everything else. It's almost too far gone. Like that, she can't be saved. You guys can be friends. You can do all that. But unfortunately, when it comes to work,
we don't talk about any of that because it's just one ear out the other.
Yeah, you're going to get lost, right? Be friends, just don't talk work.
Yeah. Some arguments are just not worth having because it doesn't go anywhere.
Absolutely not. And I think, but if you want to set yourself apart, if you really want to suck less and be more successful, ask better questions, get better answers, and question just about everything. I mean, I've got, for those that have kids, all my kids, thank God, are not in the 2-year-old phase, but everything a 2-year-old says is no and why. That's all you hear all day. And eventually it hurts your head, but you actually start wondering, why do we do that? If you're ever wondering how to do that, if you've got a niece, nephew, your own kids, a friend, have them over. 2 to 3 years old is probably the right range. That's how to do it.
Well, you brought up something interesting. I love this shameless plug, by the way. That was brilliant. We should have a t-shirt that says that. T-shirt idea number 3 for those who are counting. But you were talking about the value in things. And I think it's interesting because I actually got into an argument the other day, again, with money, where somebody said, oh, well, money is the root of all evil. We got to get rid of billionaires. And I said, well, I understand why you think all billionaires are greedy. And I understand this thought process you have. However, if that is true, that means the opposite also has to be true. You can't have one without the other because you wouldn't know how to measure it, first off. Just like you can't have good without bad. You can't have light without dark. You can't have the one thing and not have the opposite. My whole argument to that was greed has nothing to do with money itself. Greed is an emotion. Greed is a mindset. Greed is determined by the person's morality and values, not by money itself. So we got into this big argument, and I said, actually, what you're talking about is the fact that people who value money over health, mental health, those things, that is the problem. It's where the value is being placed. And we got into this big philosophical thing that got into like all these crazy things. But at the end of the day, he was very like, I hate greedy people. I hate this and I hate that. And I was like, but you have to recognize, though, that there's still the opposite of that. You can't have one without the other. And he's like, yes, you can. I was like, no, you can't. It's the law of the universe. You literally cannot. It is not possible.
Yin and yang. Come on, people. There's no such thing as happy without sad, because otherwise it would just be, right?
Exactly.
You need a word for it. It just is. Yes.
Exactly. But to get on that point, one of the things that we were discussing was salary, wages, all that stuff, and how companies treat their employees, because that was one of his big argument and points, which I agree. Not all companies and people treat their employees well. Not all companies' employees pay their people well. Not all rich people pay their people well. That's a common misconception by a lot of people who have never worked higher level in terms of money. I mean, I had this person who told me recently that their salary was determined by what they got paid at other jobs. And I was like, wait, what? She had to turn in what she made at all her previous jobs, including the ones that were freelance. And she had to like send an Excel sheet. And I was like, first off, your employer should not be determining your salary. And what I mean by that is you should know already what you want for your salary, and then you should be aligning to companies and people who want to pay that, not letting them determine your value. That to me, I was very confused. I was like, what? And then to make things worse on that end, this person was like, well, I can't do that because once I get a salary, I'm stuck to that salary. And I was like, you do realize you can ask for raises and promotions at any time. There's no dictation to that. There's no like, oh, I have to do A, B, and C. Because then she also had this mindset of like, well, if I'm going to do that, I have to work extra hours. I have to work overtime. I have to do all these things. And I was like, where the hell are you getting this information? Like, this clearly is something that I think is a problem, because this gets into that mindset of overworking and all the stuff we've kind of been talking about. But to me, that was just like an extra step of like fuckery. I was like, what the fuck? Like, literally, that was my reaction. I was like, I don't know what to say to that. Like, you had to turn in all of what you made at your like, what?
That's horrible. And again, why would you want to, even if you're desperate for a job, right? I get that piece of it. But the piece that I don't understand is, why would you want to work for someone that's that concerned about what you made, that we can't overpay for this person? We just can't overpay. Like, that's on them. That's not on you at all. That's their problem, not yours. So all you're doing is, unfortunately, feeding into their fears. What I would recommend in that situation is be like, no, this is what I think. This is what I want to get paid. Put a range in there and say, let's negotiate. And if they say no, it was not the right job for you. That is insane.
I agree. I was so stunned. I didn't even know what to say. And I was like, well, maybe we need to do an entire podcast episode on toxic red flags of applying to jobs, clients, all that stuff.
Blake, I'm going to just use a term that you used a second ago, because you've used the fuck as an adjective, noun, pronoun, verb, everything today. Fuckery. I think we should call it business fuckery. I like that.
I like that.
I'm in. Because the red flag, everything else is what everyone's expecting. But you say business fuckery, they're going to be like, what? What are you talking about? Now.
Business fuckery.
What was I'll fart it out of my sleep. What was it? Or what was it?
Oh, yeah. He said I could fart that out in my sleep. And I literally, we were in the middle of a very serious discussion. And he said that. And I about fell out of my chair. I was laughing so hard because I did not expect it. Like, we were in this very serious discussion. We're going back and forth about you set your own rates, value. And then he's like, I could just fart that out in my sleep. I was like, first off, that's irrelevant. But like, how are you using that as an argument right now? I said, you do realize that you can do that, but other people can't. And I think that's the problem that we kind of talked about a little bit in the last episode, is not perceiving the value. It's hard to get your rates and things right if you can't even measure and perceive your own value. And I think artists in particular have a very hard time with that, because the value and the measurement is not always like straight analytical numbers.
Yeah, no, I'm digesting that for a second. I think you're right. And I think part of it, though, in addition to what you're saying, is I think it goes to the fact that no one teaches you this stuff, right?
That's true. Nobody does.
It's not one of those things that we talk about. We talk about what is the value of a dollar? What is basic economics? We don't talk about truly how to negotiate. Even in business school, there are facets of it, but it's an art in a lot of ways. And unfortunately, what people realize, or don't realize, I guess, is that everything's negotiation, especially in business. Part of it is everything's negotiable. We just treat it like it's not. When I was working it was probably the biggest range ever. They weren't levels. I think they were called bands or something. So there was one job that I was looking to hire for. It was a band 2, I think is what it was. Something like that. The salary range was 45,000 to 106,000, not 105, 106,000. I'm like, that's the range. It was just insane. So what people need to realize is that, yes, there's a budget for that position. But at the end of the day, if they have a position opening, they're going to be able to be flexible, especially in the value that you bring. So if you're going into this and let's say your rate is 100K, but they offer you 95, go back to them and don't take that as like, screw them, they don't see my worth. Make them see your worth. Part of the deal too is that you don't placate to this, you fight for what you want as well. You don't just let the universe, again, we talk about the flowing of energies and universe stuff, right? The universe will set you up for success. It's your job to follow through on that. If you choose not to, that's you, not the universe trying to screw you over. If someone comes back with you and they say 95 and you say, well, here's why I want 100, and they still say no, yeah, I'd probably walk away. But if they come back and you've got a good point, you learn a couple of things. One, you learn how to negotiate. Two, you stand up for yourself. And three, you understand truly what your worth is. That's part of life. And if, again, they say it doesn't fit in the budget, find a way to, because everything in life is flexible.
Well, I will say, typically it's really rare. And I have had this happen to me where I have had somebody offer me the highest amount before, but it's really rare that somebody will offer you the highest amount first. You should really almost always, I recommend negotiating after the first offer is made, because most typically that's the lowest they're willing to go, or the lowest they thought you were willing to go. It's not actually like what they have to offer. And never ever go and ask, oh, well, what's your budget for this position?
Ugh.
They're automatically go, oh, we can't move it. Sorry. No.
Yes.
That's not the way you go about it. You need to say, well, I'm really looking for this. And don't say it's based off of other people. I hate when people are, oh, well, I looked it up and other people are making this amount. Who fucking cares? Irrelevant. I don't understand why you are basing your pricing off of someone else when that person probably has no idea how to base their pricing. And that was one of the arguments my friend was using, who said I could fart it out in my sleep. Oh, well, other people. I don't fucking care what other people are doing. Other people, you don't know how to do your own pricing. So why do you think other people know how to do their pricing? And nobody's going to be able to tell you better than you what your value is. And nobody's going to be able to look out for you the way that you look out for you. Even someone who has the best interest at heart. Because at the end of the day, you're the only person who really knows. I hate when people say that, oh, well, I have to look at what other people are making. I have to look at my competitors. Who fucking cares? All of that is irrelevant.
100%. That is, I can't summarize it better at all, because I think it's a very, very true point. I think it's one of those things that is also really beneficial to a lot of people to understand that as well, that if you're going to like Glassdoor or one of those services and you're saying, okay, how much is someone typically making this? It's a good reference point to say, am I right? Like, is this the right job I should be looking for? But if you're going to go and go negotiate, I will tell you, especially being a hiring manager, a lot of the time, I hate when people come in and say, well, I've got a friend here and they make this. I'll be like, nope, I don't want you.
Well, because usually, unfortunately, I hate to say it, but usually that gets back to perception. Your perception is, oh, they don't know what they're doing. Because somebody who's already made that amount or is confident making that amount would not come at you that way with it as an argument. That would not be the argument. It would have nothing to do with what other people make. It would have to do with the value. So a really good story I have for that I heard recently, there was, I think she's a lawyer or she's a life coach. Or she's both. I can't remember, but she was hiring somebody who was going to be like the person who does all the program management for her company.
Okay.
So one of her old clients that she had helped a long time ago ended up reaching out, and she thought she was perfect, offered her, I think it was like $85,000 a year. And that person came back and said, I appreciate that, but I need at least 120 to 150. This is why. And she said, first off, I've been your client, so I have the whole experience of point A to all the way through. She had already had experience in everything that they were asking her to do. She was going to be bringing in her own intellectual property. She had all these reasons, none of which had to do with anybody else's pricing or, oh, what's your budget or any of that stuff. Literally, it was all her value that she was giving to this position. And this is somebody who is a lawyer. So she was like, what the hell is going on? I'm getting my ass wiped on the floor by this person in the negotiation of salary, and I'm a lawyer. And it is because they don't teach you this stuff. So long story short, she knew she was the best person for the job and she made it happen. She ended up offering her like, I think it was 155,000. And that was way past the budget that they had for it. She actually made it happen. She made it work. So if a company really wants you, they'll figure it the fuck out. Simple as that. They will make it happen.
Oh, Blake, I love it today. You're fired up and I'm loving this. This is amazing. And they will make it the fuck happen. And I'll tell you right now, heed our advice today on this. Understand that, like, not only question everything, but fight for what's yours. If you really want a job and it came in low, fight for that. If you justify your position, if you go in and you say, let's say your last job, you made 20,000, all of a sudden you want to make 80, that's a big gap. I'm not saying you can't do it, but you need to justify it. You need to go in like your friend did and understand what your value is that you bring. And this is why I feel like I deserve that. And they should give it to you. Again, not everyone is going to be receptive to this, but the people that you want to work for will be. And consider all of those things. Have fun in this process and also challenge all these things. Like you got into several great arguments this week. They're kind of fun to get in arguments like this, especially if the type of person who's like, oh yeah, bring it. It's on. I got this, right? It's fun to go through that exercise with people. However, come prepared. All of life, come prepared. One of my actual sayings I do really enjoy is, life doesn't wait for you. You have to go chase it. That's a true thing in life, right? If you're sitting back waiting for your moment, don't, because that moment's not going to be there. You have to put yourself up for success and let it present it so you can take advantage of it. Go out there, make it happen. And Blake, you look like I love your like gangsta pose right now. You got this like serious, like, yeah, that's up. Sup. I love that. I'm in. I'm sold.
My hot Lana's coming out, as my friends like to call it.
Yeah, that's an Atlanta face right there. That's like what is it? College, not station or whatever it is, the south side of.
I know what you're talking about. I can't remember. I haven't lived in Georgia in a long time.
South Atlanta, anyways. It's college. It's gonna drive me nuts. Please post below. It's college something. And I made a mistake, got off. It's right by Atlanta airport, and I made a mistake getting off there one time, and it's rough. So yes, that face I saw a lot when I got off.
Oh gosh, Atlanta airport is scary. It's ginormous.
Yes. And it's connected by a weird thing underground, and it's not well marked, and you can walk. It's weird. Yes.
Well, Justin, as they say, all good things must come to an end.
Alas, they must. However, this isn't the end, because next week, same time, same channel, we drop another episode.
So get excited, because we're going to be diving deeper into all the topics of the not so subtle truth about success and
the art of sucking less in the pursuit of it. So join the conversation below, and don't forget to subscribe.